Hello, my name is Jitin Joshi and I am the former executive chef of Gymkhana and Banaras, both with 1-star Michelin. How I represent my food is by the name Rogan Joshi. Rogan is color, Josh means passion. That's how I would reflect as my personality and also as my cooking, which you are about to get your hands on to. What I've created today is a simple menu, very simple, of 3 lovely courses. The first one being a mackerel which has been marinated with curry leaf and ginger, served with a tomato chutney and samphire, followed by a spiced lamb rack, confit fennel, some creamy polenta and bacon tomato sauce, and last but not the least, a steamed date slice with a toffee sauce and clusters of black sesame and almonds. All of this deliciously and lusciously paired with this lovely Zola wine. These are the things that you will get in your Banquist hamper. Mackerel, 2 fillets, mustard oil in a small sachet, red and yellow cherry tomatoes, samphire is delicious and salty herb, fresh curry leaves, extremely delicious and flavorful, coriander, chives, shallots, garlic, lime, chilies, bit of ginger, chili powder. Now this chili powder is Kashmiri chili powder. It's got a bright, vibrant red color but not as much heat. Smoked paprika, bay leaves, lemon thyme. This is slightly different from the regular thyme, but lemon thyme is more subtle, it's got more citrus notes to it. A spice mix of fennel, black pepper and cumin, lardons, San Marzano tomatoes, quick cooked polenta powder, baby fennel, beautiful rack of lamb, a date pudding pre-made by us, almond flakes and black sesame seeds mixed in, some icing sugar, double cream. All of this has been deliciously paired with this lovely Zola wine. So you've had a look at all the ingredients now, which comes in the Banquist box. There are a few essentials in your home that you would require to prepare this meal, starting from sugar, bit of butter, some eggs, milk, salt and pepper, a vegetable oil, olive oil, few pans, a non-stick pan, a NutriBullet or a home mixer. I would prefer this blade because that's sharper and does the job better. A tray with baking parchment, wooden spoon, a whisk, a couple of knives, a spatula, scissors, and last but not the least, a little piece of J-cloth to keep the fish after it comes off the pan. Just so that you don't get too stressed while you're having your dinner, let's do a lot of prep in the prep section and just get on with it. Let's get the lamb out from the fridge, because obviously it's sitting in the fridge at about 4 degrees. Temperature is quite cold in there. Let it relax, let it come to room temperature before we start the actual cooking. So I'm preheating the oven at 140 degrees, and this is for our almond and sesame crisps. It's 140 degrees. If you've got a fan, keep the fan low so it doesn't fly away. And once that's done, we get cracking. We crack the egg. We need only the egg whites in a nice bowl. Make sure there's no shell that has gone in. And if it has, there's a little trick that I'll show you. Use the same. It's very difficult to pick out the shell, as you must have noticed if you have tried it before. So like that piece of shell, it's very hard to get from your with a spoon or with your finger. So use the same empty shell, and believe it or not, it just sticks like for like. And there you go. There's no shells now. Break the protein, the egg white, using a fork, and gently breaking the protein, incorporating a little bit of air. It's not a pavlova, it's not a meringue. We just need to break the egg white. Equal quantities of egg white. So I've got one egg white is around 40 grams. So 1, 2, let's start with 3. This is icing sugar. 3 spoons. Gonna mix it nicely. You might see some lumps there, but don't worry too much. The idea for this is to coat the almonds and the sesame, and once you put it in the oven, it starts to dehydrate and make the nuts crispy. It's going to take about an hour, and that's the reason why that's the first thing that we are doing. The almond that's pre-mixed with the black sesame, you're going to mix them. And make sure that the egg white and sugar mix goes all the way and coating each and every nut. And once it feels a little bit sloppy, as you can see, you can add a bit more. So there's no perfect recipe for this, but you can't really go wrong as well. So once that's mixed nicely, you can see this nice looking color. You can now line a parchment paper on a tray and spoon these out. You could either do it as a sheet or as little clusters and break them up later, whatever you wish. But I like to do these little clusters, because then you can actually put them on the plate nicely and then crush them as you go along eating it. If you got a few extras, you can munch them while you're plating up your dessert, or save them for your granola the next morning. Put it in the oven, 140 degrees. Should take about an hour. Just keep an eye on them. So now let's prepare this lamb. It's already been French trimmed. As you can see, a 6-bone rack. Some extra fat has been already taken off. So what we're going to do is score it with the tip of your knife. You don't have to go too deep, but make these incisions so that the fat renders itself nicely and the heat penetrates through evenly as well. So try and keep it even. Similarly on the other side, like so. Once that's done, I'm going to seal off the lamb and then season it with a spice mix that's been provided. So it's got 3 ingredients: fennel, cumin and black pepper, and of course salt will be added for seasoning as well. So we get our pan warmed up. The pan should be not scorching hot and should not be very cold either. And back in the days when I was learning, in fact as recent as the year 2000, when I was cooking in a Michelin-Starred kitchen, I did this, and the chef was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Checking the pan if it's hot or not." And that's how you can feel the heat, because the ears are, you exude heat from the body in certain extremities, and you can actually feel if the pan is hot or not, and it does work. Honestly, it does. So once it's hot enough so that you can feel the heat coming through, you take your lamb and you gently let it sizzle so that the fat starts to melt and caramelization will start happening. I'm going to season the meat side liberally and then wait for the magic to happen. Should take about 4 to 6 minutes depending on how hot your pan is. So as you can see now, it's starting to turn a beautiful color, and I'm sure you can smell it in your kitchen as well. And you can see that gorgeous fat coming off and the caramelization happening. Just going to turn it up a little bit. And the idea is to play with the heat. If you feel that it's going too fast, especially on the edges, you can turn it around to to make sure that that part is not in the center of the pan. And I'll keep checking, especially when the heat is higher. And this is an important step in your final cooking, because this is what you're doing to the lamb. After that, it's going to go in the oven and pretty much on the plate straight after. As you can see, the fat is now being rendered. Looking nice and beautiful, smells delicious already. There you go. Yeah, beautiful color. And while I'm showing you this, I'm actually caramelizing the bottom of the meat as well. Turn it over for a few seconds. Smoke is coming too fast, as you can see. I'm going to turn the heat down. And it's got the residual heat from the pan is still carrying on the cooking, so you can turn it down now. Beautiful, look at that. Beautiful color there. One final time on the other side and it'll be coming off. So as I said, it's taken us about, I would say, 5 minutes. Beautiful, as you can see, look at that. Beautiful golden color. Extra fat has been rendered off, and now this is ready for, see, you can see that that extra fat which has come off. And this is called rendering. So once the lamb is been sealed off, we use the spice mix that's been provided, and just liberally, to be honest, don't bother with the spoon, liberally rub it on the lamb, and you will see that this will impart a beautiful flavor and go everywhere pretty much, so that the seasoning from and the flavors from these spices are kind of infused nicely. We don't do this before searing off, and the reason being that the spices will get burnt. I mean, that's pretty logical, isn't it? So we seal it off so that the meat gets caramelization, the fat gets out of the way, the extra fat, you get a bit of crispy skin, and then you apply the spice mix which will hold the flavors. This will be kept on the side until it's ready to go in the oven, which you will see shortly. We're gonna now prepare the curry leaf and ginger paste for the mackerel, and this is a South Indian inspired dish, which in south of India and Sri Lanka, you know, the abundance of these curry leaves and ginger as your prime ingredients or flavoring ingredients would lend in your diet, in your food. And obviously, it being a coastal area, seafood is galore, and you know, sea is around on 3 sides, and pretty much all around Sri Lanka, as it is in England. So so the abundance of seafood is obviously is the reason for choosing this dish as a starter. So a couple of I would say 4 or 5 sprigs of curry leaf going into the jar. Again, you can make it as hot as you like, or you know, as per your taste and liking. Take out the little stalks. If you feel that's too much for you, probably omit it, or if not enough, you can add more. So again, this is not the recipes which I'm giving is more of a guide. You can suit yourself to your palate and make sure that you have got the maximum enjoyment. So I'm going to put 3 of these. A bit of ginger. So I'm going to take a nice piece of ginger, peel the ginger, and obviously cut them into smaller pieces before it goes into the mixer. Ginger as well has got that nice kick and nice heat to it, so if you are planning to not use the chilies, you will still find some amount of heat and some lovely bite to your mackerel anyway. And mackerel is an oily fish, so it's got that you know, because of that, the oils, it's something sweet and spicy, works very beautifully with mackerel. So as you can see, I've done the cut the ginger into smaller cubes, put them straight in. Some lime. Again, rub it on the heel of your palm before you cut it to get maximum extraction, maximum juice coming out of the lime. Cut it at a slight angle. It's easier to hold and squeeze straight into the jar. I reckon half is going to be enough, but we'll see if we need a bit more acidity. We can always add something, some lime. So that goes in. Now I'm going to add some vegetable oil. You don't want, so again, about I would say a nicely measured tablespoon. You should have enough amount of liquid to get the blade moving. Bit of salt, generously, and as I showed you earlier, the blades to be used are these ones, because they'll give you a finer paste. And then just blitz it in a neutral. If you see that happening, that means there's not enough liquid to get the blades going, so put it back. And this happens when you're doing smaller quantities, but then you should know how to, so a bit more oil to get this going. So probably same again, so about, in all I've got 3 tablespoons gone in. Smells delicious. You can smell the ginger, curry leaf beautifully coming out. And just gonna have a quick taste. Oh, it's absolutely delicious. Seasoning, you can actually eat this as a chutney, you know, almost. I can put it on toast. I mean, probably you don't want to try it, but by all means be my guest. Seasoning, slightly extra seasoning of what you feel is the right. So as a chutney, that was the right seasoning, but I want it to be seasoned, to be applied on the mackerel, to marinate the mackerel. So it has to be slightly over seasoned, slightly, to make sure that the mackerel gets the deliciousness. I'm going to leave this in the same bowl, and we get to the mackerel and start prepping the mackerel. So we've rinsed and pat dried the mackerel fillets, which have been done beautifully by the fishmonger. Put them skin side down. As you can see, all the pin bones have been removed. This little black bit, we can scrape it off from the fillet, because that's bitter. When you, there's nothing wrong with that, you can eat it, but it just makes it bitter. And once that's done, I'm gonna streamline the sides slightly, turn it over, again trim to make it look nice and clean without wasting too much. You don't want to waste too much. And then holding the fillet, pinching it slightly like so, and with a sharp knife we just score it. When you score it, it helps the heat to penetrate, and secondly it looks beautiful as well, because these little gashes will open up in the pan. I'm also gonna make this into 2, so in one portion you will have 2 of these going in. That goes skin side down, ready for the marinade to be applied. So once your mackerel is on the plate, skin down, you don't need to put a lot of marinade on the skin, because that's going to get crisped up. You're going to apply the ginger paste that you made earlier nicely, liberally on the fish, and this will help the seasoning and the flavors to penetrate into the fish and make it even more delicious. There we go. This, once done, can be sitting at room temperature for half an hour, an hour. If it's more than an hour, you would put it in the fridge, but for half an hour, 40 minutes is perfectly fine, and it'll take nice flavors onto the fish. We are going to prepare the tomato and bacon sauce, which will be served with the lamb. So for that, banana shallot gets chopped up. So again, cut into half, peel it nicely. Just gonna cut it from the tail end, keeping the base here so it keeps them together, keeps the petals together. There's two ways of doing it. You can cut them like this, so go straight through the middle, equidistant. Do not go all the way, keeping the stem part intact. Once that's been cut, you just go across. Always watch your thumb, because there's a most likely chance of you cutting your thumb, because the thumb, so when I'll come to the end, I'll move the thumb slightly towards the back. Take your time, it's not a race. This can go in the bin or in a stock. And that's your shallots chopped up. I'll show you another technique of doing it. You could do the same thing. Instead of from this side, you could do it from the other side, where your knife is at an angle. You're going not all the way flat on the chopping board, but at an angle. Similarly, turn it over. I think that's more than what we need, but then we'll utilize it as much as we go along. We'll need some garlic. So the garlic, literally it's taken off garlic cloves. 2 or 3 should be enough, and just smash them from the back of your knife and take the skin out. So pretty straightforward. That's your veg prep. Tomato sauce obviously needs tomatoes, so we've got these lovely Saint Marzano, bright color, beautiful looking, lovely sweetness. So we will just make a fine paste or a puree. Same blade on like before. That's it, we're ready to make the tomato sauce. In this saucepan, medium sized, like so. Put it on your stove, nice and clean, nice and hot. Once that's heating up, let's go through a quick run through of the ingredients. So olive oil to start, will go in the pan. Got some lardons which will be rendered off. For the flavoring, you got lemon, thyme, bay leaf and garlic. Shallots for the sweetness will be sweated out, and then obviously the tomatoes. So I think we are pretty ready to go. I'll add a little bit of olive oil, not a lot, because you got the fat from the bacon. Lardons. If you don't want to use the lardons, you could choose not to as well, but I feel it adds a lot of depth and a bit of nice saltiness and smokiness to your sauce. A little bit of chunks as well will come through when you're enjoying the dish. So what I'll do is start off with bay leaf. Dried bay leaf, quite potent. One is pretty much enough for what we need. You can see it's starting to sizzle. Chuck in my garlic. And as you can see, my pan is quite hot, so I've pulled it off from the flame. So it's all about controlling the heat. So if you don't have time to turn the knob and put the heat down, it's still cooking, it's still carrying on. The bay leaf is on top here now. It's not touching the hot oil. The hot oil is getting the garlic. So I'm just basically controlling the heat as well as showing you on camera. So once that is sizzling away, I will add the lardons like so. Beautiful, you can see the lardons now with the garlic. Tastes beautiful. You can see the fat coming off as well. Starts to stick at the bottom a little bit. And that's where the flavor is, you know. All that flavor is here. That's where the flavor is. Look at that. Beautiful. So that's gonna take another minute or so. I'm gonna put a few sprigs of the lemon thyme. The lemon thyme doesn't need, because it's a fresh herb unlike the bay leaf, so it doesn't need that hot oil to bring out the flavors. So that's why you can add it at a later stage of the cooking. So now pretty much most of the fat has come off. The bacon, you don't want to color too much. It's mainly for the saltiness and the smokiness. Once that is sizzling away, I'm going to add my chopped shallots. I'm going to turn the heat up slightly because I can feel that it's not much happening in there, because I've just reduced the temperature of the pan by adding those onions, the shallots rather. So I've just turned up the heat a little bit. At this stage you can add a little bit of salt, not too much, which will help the shallots to draw the water from the shallots. Not a lot because there's already salt in the bacon. A little bit of cracked pepper. Some cracked pepper. Pepper during cooking gets more and more intense. So I've not added a lot of pepper at this stage, because when the pepper will boil along with, because I'll add the tomatoes and then this will cook for a while. So the intensity and the heat of the pepper shall increase. So pepper, in my opinion, should be added towards the end. I've just added a little bit now to get it going. And you can hear the sound now, you can see the steam coming off. That means a good temperature. The moisture is being turned into steam. And slight coloration happening now, which we don't want. So I'm just going to turn it slightly down, and now is the time to add my tomato puree. I'm gonna take a little bit of water and rinse off the residue of the tomato and put it back down as well. And this now can be put in the back burner at a slower heat, and it'll start to cook away. I also like to add a little bit of olive oil at this stage. It makes it nicer and shinier as well. So this sizzling away, just going to leave it on the back burner at a slow heat, and there it goes. So I'll keep an eye on that and let it simmer for at least 20-30 minutes. So the almond clusters, as I call them, so they are out now. It's been an hour in the oven at 140 degrees. As you can see that they've kind of hardened and solidified, and you got a flat surface here and like little clusters. On this corner they've become darker because obviously the oven was not even heat, which might happen in your oven as well. They're all different piece of kit, but there's nothing wrong with that. But as I said, these are slightly darker than these ones because of uneven cooking, but they are ready to go on your dessert plate very soon. Prep done. Let's get on with the starter. So we are now preparing the tomato chutney with which goes with the mackerel. So for that, obviously you need cherry tomatoes, a bit of ginger, green chili, lime, some mustard oil, salt, bit of Kashmiri chili powder that we spoke about earlier. It's got a bright red color but not so much heat, and samphire, which adds the saltiness and also a bright green color. So again, very simple recipe here, very simple. You literally mix all the ingredients, you cut them. So coriander, I've just with the stalks and the leaves all in one, nice and fine. In a bowl where we're going to mix everything together. We're going to take some samphire, and again just line it up nicely and just make little chunky pieces, not too fine, not too large either. And this is going to be mixed through. I'm going to also put a few samphire on top as a little lovely garnish. It goes in the bowl. Cherry tomatoes, I'm going to cut them in half, pop them in there. Again, this eye of the tomato is very edible. Personally, there is no reason to remove that, especially in a small cherry tomato. Ginger, again, depends how hot you want it, because you got a slight bit of heat from the ginger. So I've just taken a small piece and just gonna peel it. When you cut the ginger, make sure that the dices are really fine and really small. So you slice them. As I said to you earlier, your thumb is at the back, so you don't cut your thumb. You go as thin as possible, and once that's done, just lay them flat like so, and then cut them lengthways into juliennes. Step 3, just turn them 90 degrees and go again into smaller brunoise or smaller dices. I think this will be a bit too much, so I'm just going to add about 2 teaspoons worth into that bowl. This one we can set aside for later. So the next is chili. Now chilies are tricky ones because obviously you don't know how hot they are and how much to add unless you've actually added them. So I would say, first of all, if you cut them in half like so, lengthways, and if you discard the seeds and the white bit inside the veins, it does become less spicy or less hot. But there's another way you can actually smell them. So if they are potent, that really, I know it'll take some experience and a lot of chilies to be slit and brought close to your nose, but from experience I can tell it's got a fairly moderate to a high heat, and what I would do is I would take off the central seeds and the central veins, because that's where there's a compound called capsaicin which causes the heat, and that concentration of that capsaicin would be reduced, and hence it will be not as spicy if you take these out. So I'm going to take these away. Similarly, like I did for the ginger, we'll make thin juliennes first, and be careful to wash your hands thoroughly before you touch your eyes or before you get on with the rest of your cooking, because that will be not a pleasant experience. So once these juliennes are done, I think this should be enough. I'm going to turn it over 90 degrees. I don't know if you can, but in the background I can hear my tomato sauce bubbling away. Just give it a quick stir so it doesn't catch the bottom, and then come back to our chutney. So that green chilies are going in. These can be discarded. Now we will season this chutney. We're literally going to mix everything together. So we'll add a dash of the mustard oil. You will get a small sachet, which will be enough for the salad. Salt, lime. There's almost like a salady, dressing-y kind of a vibe to it, and then about, I would say, 1/3 teaspoon of Kashmiri chili. Don't be alarmed with the quantity of chili. You might think, oh my god, that's a lot, but actually this is more of a vibrant heat, and not so much heat. It's more of a vibrant color rather. Mix that through nicely. As you can see, all the elements coming together. It might leave a little bit of water while it's sitting, so it's almost macerating in that ginger chili spice kind of a thing. So it actually makes it better if it sits for a wee bit. Quick taste, and let's see if it needs any more seasoning. So try to take all the when you're tasting, try to take all the elements, and so the tomato's got a beautiful sweetness. You got that nice warmth coming from the ginger, a bit of back heat from the chili. That mustard oil is really lush, putting everything together, and it just got that freshness, and not only looks vibrant and colorful, but kind of in your mouth it's like explosion of flavors, and there's lots going on, and you will see that. You can almost eat that as a salad on its own. It's so delicious. We are now getting ready to sear our mackerel, and I am going to start with a bit of olive oil on the pan. It's a non-stick pan, so it doesn't need a lot of olive oil. Mackerel is ready here. I would suggest keep a plate or a tray with a J-cloth or some kind of absorbent paper ready, because when we take out the fish, it's gonna rest on there. You need a spatula to pick the fish, obviously. For the fish cookery, again, it's important to control the heat. The pan should be quite hot, not very hot, because it might burn the ends and the fish starts to curl up. So it has to be hotter than what we used earlier for the lamb, but not smoking hot. As you can see, there are two parts of the fillet that are thicker, which they'll go in first. Tail ends, or the thinner fillets, will go in later. Smoking now, so it's a bit too hot, so I'm just pulled it off from the stove to cool it down a little bit. I think it's ready now, so we gently pick up the fish. We lay it it's hot enough that it doesn't require it to be put back on the stove, and hence I've kept it on the side. You can see it starts to curl up, but not as much. So the thicker fillets have gone in, as you can see. The tail ends will go slightly later. I'm going to put this on the heat now. So it's got a head start of about 2 minutes or so now. Tail ends are going in now. Every few seconds, keep turning so you have even heat. As I said, controlling the heat is very important. And the fish, as you can see, is going to be cooking only from one side, and that's the skin side up. The other side is going to cook by unilateral cooking, or just cooking from one side. You can already start smelling the ginger and the curry leaf coming to life because of the heat. The best way to cook it is stay away from it. There is a time when I will intervene, but especially with fish cookery, it's best to leave it doing what it does best, which is coloring, caramelizing and crisping up the skin. And don't fiddle with it, don't touch it, or try to be over anxious. When it's done, it's automatically going to leave the pan and come off. You can start seeing the translucent color of the meat in the edges, around the edges. That means the protein is starting to coagulate, which means it's cooking. Now, as you can see, the translucent bit is increasing, coming towards the top. Once it's almost there, I will gently take it from one side. As you can see now here, I'm lifting it gently from one side, letting the oil, and you can see it's coming off so easily, and slide my palette knife under, and in a quick twist of my wrist, I'm just gonna flip it. So the pan is quite hot, as you can see, started to color. I'm just going to take it off the heat and simply flip the other sides as well. Go gently from the tail end towards the top, from the tail end towards the head, and a gentle flick. Just going to leave it in a warm pan. I've put the heat down to 0, and we'll just take it off, ready to plate up. So let's plate up the mackerel starter. So for your mise en place for plating, you have the seared curry leaf and ginger mackerel. You got the tomato chutney with samphire and some samphire as a little garnish on top. So let's get started. As you can see, there's some water has been coming out from the tomatoes because of the salt. So you just use that as a dressing, make it nice and moist. And don't worry if you smash them a little bit as well. I like to plate them slightly away from the center, so you got space for the mackerel, and probably get equal colors of the yellow and the red. Start with your tail end first. The tail sits there, which is the base of your second piece, or the sits on top, slightly overlapping onto the chutney. Give it a little bit of this dressing or that liquid just as a little drizzle, and take a few samphire and place it on top to give that nice crunch and saltiness. And there you have it, curry leaf and ginger seared mackerel with a tomato and samphire chutney. Hope you enjoyed your starter. Let's do the main now. Before we get started cooking the mains, first of all, set your oven at 180 degrees for the lamb, and let's prepare the stock for the polenta. So basically, the polenta can be cooked with water, could be cooked with a bit of milk, or the mixture of both. I like to cook it with milk and infuse it with a bit of garlic, some bay leaf and salt. So that'll be your base, and that'll be so flavorsome that when you cook the polenta in it, it'll be nice and delicious. So all you have to do is, again, smash your garlic, just take off the skin, pop that whole thing in a small pan. Got a cup of milk going in there, 1 bay leaf, generous pinch of salt. I'll also top this with equal amount of water. Just add it equal amount of water as well. This can go on the stove and start to simmer so that it infuses all the flavors inside. Next, on to the fennel. These are baby fennel, beautiful, very nice, very delicious. So we'll just trim the ends and get a bit of the stem out of the way. Fennel has been lined up nicely, as you can see. Put a generous pinch of salt, some water, not a lot, about quarter of a cup, and then generous amount of olive oil. We're actually confying the fennel in the olive oil, and the water is just helping the steam to be formed, and when the steam forms, it cooks the vegetable or cooks the fennel. You need to cover this, so make sure you get a nice and tight fitting lid, or not, as long as it does the job. This one should be fine, because as you can see, it's sealing the ends, it's not catching anywhere, and goes on the flame, not a very high flame. It should simmer 15 to 20 minutes and should be done. So as you can see, it's bubbling away, the water, but I think it's going too fast. So you can just slow it down a little bit, and the idea is to go slow and make it like a confit and really tender. So let's get to the lamb now. So I've got the tray which we had used for the almond, that's been taken off. I'm just going to put a little bit of olive oil on the tray. Get your rack of lamb. Literally, I'm going to use this, smear it and lay it flat. The oven, which we set at 180, that's where this is going in. The lamb's going in 180, 12 minutes, and then we'll check it after to see how it is. Here we are checking the fennel. It's been around 15 minutes now. So as you can see, it's been simmering very slowly. All the water is gone, and if you watch the tip of my knife, literally it goes in like that. I'm sure you can just feel that there is no resistance, especially on the thicker part of the bulbs. It's literally just going through like a hot knife in butter, and that's what we need exactly. So I'm gonna just take it off the heat and put it away and use it now when we plate up very soon. So that's our tomato sauce. As you can see, most of the water has been cooked off. It's been reduced to a nice consistency. You don't want to make it too loose, because when you put it on the plate, sometimes have the water spreading out on the sides and might not look beautiful. Of course, the bay leaf has done its job, so that needs to be discarded. Similarly, your bigger thyme twigs can come off. If you see those chunky pieces of garlic that you had put earlier, you can remove those as well, or if you want, you can just leave them in there. They're still nice and delicious to eat because they're now cooked. You can smash them with the back of the fork to just mix them into the sauce. I'm just going through with this fork to see if I can fish any more of these elements that are not needed, and especially when you bite into it, it shouldn't be off-putting. And once that's done, I'm going to add a couple of finishing touches to this sauce before it goes back on the heat to be served. So I'm going to add a little bit of smoked paprika. Again, I don't like to cook with smoked paprika too much because it's got that beautiful smoky aroma, which I think is nice as is. We're going to warm it up still anyway. I always like to put a dash of olive oil toward the end for that little shine and that gloss. And also, last but not the least, because we had used thyme as a flavoring, I'm just going to put a few lemon thyme leaves, pick them directly into the sauce, and not the stalks, just the little leaves, so that you got that fresh thymy punch coming through. It's already got a lot of flavor from the stalks, mind you, but this just gives a little added boost, if you will, and that little green specks in your red sauce look nice as well, don't they? So that's done. Tomato bacon sauce is ready. So it's been 12 minutes. We checked the lamb, it's still not ready, so we've given it another 4 to 5 minutes. We'll check it again, and this time we'll pierce it to see the juices coming out and see if it's ready or not. So it's been about at 180 degrees. It's been in for about 16-17 odd minutes. Just pulled it off, and we're just going to check whether it needs more time or not. So obviously I can smell the spices there started to cook this. So if you press it from the ends, you feel it's difficult when there's a whole rack because it's a big piece of meat. So I'll suggest either you make a little incision with a small end of a knife and see the juices that are coming out, and let's do that together and see. So you can see reddish pinkish juices coming out. So but it's pretty much done. Needs a bit of resting now, and while this is resting, we're gonna do the other elements. Whilst the lamb is resting now, so we will now finish the polenta. So the water was the milk and the water was infused with bay leaf, which has done its job. I'm just gonna discard it, and so is the garlic. For this we now need a whisk so the liquid is now flavorful and seasoned. Try to avoid adding salt later on. So it's best to add salt in the liquid and making sure that the polenta is seasoned nicely, because once it is under seasoned, it's hard to, I can taste the bay leaf, the garlic, and I feel that there's a little bit of salt needed. I'm just going to add some salt now. In order the polenta is nice and creamy, there's two things I like to add, is a bit of butter and some olive oil, so that fat adds to the creaminess of the polenta. So the butter I'm going to add now, so maybe 2 or 3 little cubes like this is enough. And as you can see, the temperature of the liquid is rising nicely. And now I've got about 2 heaped tablespoons of the quick cooked polenta. Add it gently, keep whisking at the same time to avoid any lumps. So take your time, go slow, and make sure you don't have any lumps. And you can take an assessment, like this little bit is, I feel, is not required because it's all bubbling away nicely. So to that liquid I've added enough of the dry polenta, which is bubbling away nice. You can see nice and creamy. Again, the polenta, you can cook it out and set it as a cake. You can make it nice and thick as well, but I would say in like a mashed potato consistency. Bit of olive oil, as I said earlier. Personally, I again like to add a nice flavor and also gives that nice gloss and that creaminess to the polenta. As you can see, it's now leaving the sides of the pan at the bottom, which means you're ready to plate. So just minutes before we plate up, we need to bring the sauce back up to temperature. Just heat it up again. It's already been seasoned and tested. So now we're starting to plate up the lamb. So for the lamb, obviously you need the lamb, which is being resting nicely. I've got a board here with some chives, which I'm going to chop for garnish. The confit fennel. You got the polenta, which is ready, and the bacon and tomato sauce, which is good to go as well. So let's first start chopping the chives and keeping it ready for the plating. So I'm just going to trim the ends and then try to make a little cluster so they're all equal, and just simply with the stroke of a knife just go gently move the knife like the way I'm showing, because otherwise sometimes the bottom layer of the chives gets stuck to each other. Here we go, we get the lamb. You got 3 bones on either side, and in a portion you'll have 3 bones. See which side is in the meat wise, how do you divide by half. So keep the blade of the knife sticking to the bone and just slide it along the bone, holding the 2 bones together, and hopefully it should be nice and pink in the middle, like so. Okay, I'm going to cut them individual portions as well. Just cut them into half so it's 2 pieces per plate. That's the first one. So start plating up. The polenta is still nice and warm. Gonna make a nice dollop of the polenta. Again, about 12 o'clock on the plate. Then you get to your confit fennel. As we said, we'll do 2 per plate, and look if you can see how delicate and beautiful it has turned out to be. First one, there's your second one, sprinkle the chives on the polenta that beautiful bright green color. Sauce is next. You got some chunky bits from the bacon. That's going to add to your eating quality. You could always serve it on the side as well if you wish. Finally, the lamb. I've got some Maldon salt to season the ends because the seasoning obviously has not gone through to the center. Season it nicely and we put that on the plate. So rack of lamb with fennel and cumin spiced with a creamy polenta, confit fennel and bacon tomato sauce. So with this fantastic meal that we are creating, has to be served with a lovely bottle of wine as well. So let's get cracking.
Ciao, I'm Giulia and today I would like to talk about our Zolla Primitivo di Manduria. You have an ample bouquet of fresh fruity notes of blackcurrant, plum and black cherry. And also spiciness mainly given from the soil, the red brick soil that characterizes the Manduria area. So you have licorice, cocoa, and then a little bit of vanilla. On the mouth, it's an enveloping wine, it's very rounded. And these beautiful silky tannins very integrated on the mouth. You have an extraordinary, long persistent on the finish. So I will say that thanks to the minerality, the acidity of this wine, it finds its perfect combination with lamb. It's a fantastic second course. So enjoy the wine and see you soon.
So how was the lamb? Did you enjoy it? Well, it's time for dessert now. So here we have a steamed date cake. We're gonna make a caramel sauce with sugar, double cream, a bit of butter, and those clusters of almond and black sesame that we made earlier. So that's all mise en place for the dessert. Ideally, we would love to serve some ice cream with it, preferably vanilla ice cream. That's what I like. But guess what? In the Banquist bowl, it would have been a vanilla sauce if at best. So you can always get that from your freezer and serve it along with this dessert. We're going to prepare the caramel sauce now. And clean pan on a hot heat, make it nice and hot. Make sure there is no particles or no moisture, because the caramel will get lumps, and you know what this is for, right? Yeah, there you go. Sugar, again there is no set quantity for this, but I would say a good 4 to 5 heaps of sugar here, 5 teaspoons. Now you can see the sugar, this is a bit of a tricky one because it might form lumps, but nothing to be afraid of, because we're eventually making a sauce and we can always make the lumps dissolve in cream. So you can see it starts melting from the edges, from the sides. So always go on a high heat. So you can see it started to melt around the edges. Avoid using a pan like this, because the color of the caramel will not be able to, you will not be able to tell the color of the caramel, and you won't be able to stop at the right time. I'm just moving it about a little bit so that the the melted sugar is mixing gently with the unmelted or granular sugar, because what the grain of sugar does is it induces the other sugar to attach to it, and that's how it crystallizes. So the crystallization process actually is very scientific, very simple, but it starts exactly how I explain. As you can see, the caramel on the ends is getting starting to turn, but in the middle is still undissolved, so I need to mix them together. I do that by shaking it vigorously like this. As you can see, it's all coming together. There we are, there we are. And now is the time when you decide how dark your caramel sauce should be, and you are your own judge. If you like it nice and bitter, a bit darker, you can go a bit further. And at this stage where the sugar is fully melted and starting to caramelize, as you can see, you should have some butter and double cream to hand, because what this butter and double cream will do will stop the caramelization and will make the caramel into a sauce, and also stop at the color that you want. So, and always remember, the color that you see of the sugar, that is the sauce will be much lighter than that color. So always take it a couple of notches above what you like, and then add your butter and cream, so the eventual sauce will be slightly lighter than the actual caramel. So the way I like the caramel is nice and nutty, not very dark, because then it gets that bitter notes, but you still want it nice and hazelnutty. So I think it's nearly there. I'll give it 10 more seconds, and then we'll put the butter and the cream in to make it into a sauce. I think it's ready to go. There goes the butter. So the butter, as you can see, straight away starts to melt, and it has actually stopped the caramelization. Add your double cream. And as you can see, everything is happening off the flame because it got so much heat in there. I don't really need to put it on the stove. And get a nice consistency. This one looks a bit thick to me, so add a bit more of your double cream. You can see that beautiful luscious color. If you find this too dark for your taste, you can do it in a lesser shade. Pretty much that's done. We're ready to go. Now we start plating up. So now we're going to portion this date cake, and we are ready to plate. So what I'm going to do is trim slightly the ends and nibble on them. They're nice when it's cold, but when it's hot it's even better. So I need to take out 4 slices. So first I'll cut them straight through the center, and again. So this is a very simple recipe which has equal parts of egg, sugar, flour and dates, a bit of baking soda, a bit of baking powder. We mix the dates with some water, and then make a sponge mix by creaming the sugar and the butter together, folding in the flour, folding in the dates all in one, and then steaming it for about 2 hours. Once that's done, the pudding is ready, delicious and ready to serve. So as you can see, I'm just trimming the ends, which could be a nice snack for someone. And then all you need to do is warm them in a microwave quickly, which I'm going to do now. I would say about 30 to 40 seconds depending on the power. So the date slice has been put in the microwave about 30 to 40 seconds to make it nice and warm. And up on the plate, the sauce that we had prepared earlier, still nice and warm, doesn't have to be piping hot, but then douse it directly on the slices so it just starts to soak up, you know. Look at that, just soak up as much as it can, because that's what adds to the unctuousness, that rich caramel nuttiness, that buttery goodness. What's there not to like, you know. And then, as I said earlier, you could serve it with some vanilla ice cream, which goes really well, and the little clusters of sesame and almond, which give it a lovely nutty texture and a crunch while you eat it. So that's your steamed date slice with clusters of almond and black sesame seeds with a butterscotch sauce. Thank you very much for buying my lovely Banquist experience at your home. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed teaching it to you.
What are your desert island crisps?
Walker's plain salted.
What would be your death row meal?
Dumplings with a spicy sauce.
3 dinner party guests, dead or alive?
Oh, definitely would be Mr. Kipchoge. Second would be Chef Paul Bocuse, and my grandmom, because she's never seen me cook. She was way gone to the gods before I started cooking.
What is your favorite restaurant in the world?
At this point is Linea in Chicago. That's where I want to go.
What is your worst kitchen injury?
Ooh, I'll show you a little mark there. I don't know if I had smacked myself with a meat cleaver, literally full swing right on my thumb. Thankfully, I still have my thumb attached to my hand, but that was the worst one.